We may now, let's direct our attention to the one and only Bruno Sammartino. And Bruno, the date, not all that far away, actually, and I'm sure you'll be counting the days down.
Well, you're not kidding, Vince, and I'll tell you, unfortunately, even though the days are not that far away, but it seems to me like it's a long, too far away, because I am so anxious. I'll tell you, somebody was asking me, I was talking with Dominic earlier, because we were taking a workout, we were working out, and he said to me, he says, you know, you're training as if, like, it's the last week of training, because he says, you know, in other words, he thought I was working out much too hard. This is the way that I can occupy myself to let the time go by. It's by just keep training, keep thinking Zbyszko. And the more I lift, the more I run, the more I skip rope, the better I feel. And it makes the time go a little bit quicker. And it makes me more ready mentally and physically. Because I'm going to tell you something, Vince. You know, Zbyszko's been mouthing off about Bruno Sammartino not realizing that fall is gone and winter is here, the winter of my career. Well, I hope that I'm not such an idiot not to know when the time has come to retire. But Larry, let me tell you something. You will never be the man to retire Bruno Sammartino. Never. And I'm going to show you how heavy this winter can be on you. It's going to be so heavy that you're not even going to see ever the sight of spring again.
What you gonna do?
You can't fight the future.
Wrestling God.
ProWrestlingRadio.com presents.
Are you talking to me?
Pro Wrestling Radio live online.
You think The Rock actually cares?
What is he doing here?
Oh, it's true.
I'm bringing everybody with me.
That's hard time.
Be the man.
Call in with a question or comment.
6-1. Can you feel it?
I hate your ever. Hold the damn phone.
Toll free at 1-877-800-8834.
That's how I roll.
You sick son of a bitch. Come get some. Because I've done all of that.
And now your host of the show,
The king is back on his throne.
Eric
Excuse me.
Gargiulo.
And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
This is Eric Gargiulo for Pro Wrestling Radio and the CamelClutchBlog.com, and it is an honor to return 13 years later. It's been 13 years since this man has first joined me for an interview on my radio show, ProWrestlingRadio.com, and now he is heading into the WWE Hall of Fame. He is the living legend. He is the former World Heavyweight Champion, and he is my favorite guest of all time, Bruno Sammartino. Bruno, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Eric. Kind of you for all those wonderful things, but I'm very happy to be with you, and let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing, Bruno. You know, we'll get into the interview. It was in 2000, the year 2000, 13 years ago, when you first joined me on the show, and I feel like that the listeners and people that have read the interviews and downloaded them on iTunes have really gotten a good chance to know you over the 13 years that we've been able to talk. And of course, the topic of the WWE Hall of Fame has always come up when we've talked in interviews. Right. And now you're going in. So I guess the first question is, what happened?
Well, a lot of things have happened, Eric. If you remember, when I was pretty darn outspoken about them, I was very, very concerned, first of all, about the steroid drug use that were on. Now, I have to be fair here. I spoke of WWE, but this was rampant in any other wrestling organization that was going on at the time. But I was talking WWE because prior to that, as you know, WWF and all, Worldwide Wrestling Federation has eventually changed into that. And I was very, very bothered what I saw. And then you started hearing about death here and there. Remember Rick McGraw?
Yes.
And others. And so, I was very bothered by everything that was going on, and I became very outspoken about it. I know that I offended a lot of people, but I really didn't care much. I was hoping to bring attention to it, that maybe something would be done to correct what was going on, because it was not only bad, but it was very, very dangerous. Well, after a couple of years of that, I finally, I felt like I was, there were deaf ears out there. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody, wanted to hear about it. So I decided at that time, okay, I gave it my best shot. I really meant good by it all. But, since nobody cares or whatever, it's time to go on with the rest of my life my own way. And that's exactly what I did. I quit watching it. I never watched wrestling anymore for many years. And about 6 months ago, I guess, it's been about 6 months, that I first got a call from that Paul Levesque, the Triple H.
Sure.
Of course, is McMahon's son-in-law.
Yeah.
And I must tell you about this guy. I didn't know him. I really didn't know. I knew him as Triple H,
Yeah.
but I really didn't know him personally at all. And I must say that he was, he came across the phone extremely sincere, very honest. And after a few conversations, we kind of, was the end of it for a while. But then he came back about, maybe 4 months later, and we started talking again. And he started explaining to me about the, for example, the drug program that they hired Dr. Joseph Maroon to head the program, the drug program and so forth. He had a staff of about 6 people. Well, it turns out that I knew Dr. Maroon very, very well. Dr. Maroon has done 3 surgeries on my back.
Okay.
He's a world-renowned neurosurgeon. And so when they told me about him, that he's the head of the narcotic department to testing and all that kind of stuff, I must say I was impressed because I know him well. Well, I had some meetings with Dr. Maroon, and he explained to me everything that he was doing, him and his staff. And I know what kind of a man this guy is. This is an extremely well-respected man because of everything that he has done in his life and what he has achieved. And I also know, as he even told me, that he wouldn't have tackled this problem, this organization, unless he had a free hand at the whole thing. Mm-hmm. He convinced me pretty well that he had things pretty much under control. They were not only testing for different drugs and so forth, but also for concussions, and also the wellness program, which they gave total physical to all the participants, in the wrestling business to make sure that they had not done serious damage to themselves, and that they were healthy and good to go out there and perform.
Sure.
Well, like I said, after I had a number of meetings with him, I was convinced of that part because, again, I know him very, very well. Then in conversations with Paul Levesque, again, he spoke about other things that I had been outspoken about. He spoke about the nudity, the vulgarity, the profanity that existed in wrestling. And he asked me to please start watching wrestling again because, as I said, I hadn't watched it for many, many, many years. And I started watching it, and I did see, in all fairness, there was no more nudity, there was no more vulgarity, and there was no profanity. And I watched it for about 2 months straight to convince myself that that's the way it really, really was. Mm-hmm. He assured me that it was like that, and it was going to continue to be that way because they wanted their show to be more family-friendly. Well, I like that, and because of Dr. Maroon and because of what I saw with my own eyes, when he spoke to me a good while back, he said to me, he says, Bruno, you always said that you weren't interested in the Hall of Fame because you felt like you'd be a hypocrite because you had been so outspoken about against different things that were going on. But you also said, when you were asked, well, what if all that changed? What if it all changed? Would you, be fair enough then to say, it's different now and I would accept? And I said, though, yeah. I said, I have said that many, many times. Mm-hmm. I said, but I needed to be convinced that these changes were made and so forth. And Well, like I say, after months, and especially the talks I had with Dr. Maroon and what have you, I felt that it was only fair of me to be fair with them. As critical as I had been of them in the past, I had to take my hat off to them because evidently they really meant business when they talked about their drug testing and whatever. And not only that, Eric, but as I watched the show, I'm looking at these guys, and they look athletic, don't get me wrong. They look athletic and so forth, but I don't see any more of the, the look of yesteryear that they had.
You don't see any Ultimate Warriors in there anymore.
Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, the English Bulldogs, all of those guys. It was so obvious about the use of steroids and enhancement drugs with these people. So I had to be fair, and like I said, all the vulgarity, the nudity, the profanity, all disappeared. And so in talking to Paul, which by the way, I must tell you, I did not know him. I only knew him as Triple H, the one of the star wrestlers of the WWE. But on the phone, he was very convincing that he was very sincere. He really showed me that he was he meant everything that he said, and he loved the old school wrestling. He was trained by Killer Kowalski,
right?
And he said that he had great respect of my generation of wrestlers, and that as time went on and he had more of a say-so about the business, that he would even like to go more and more toward their era. I must tell you that I was very, very impressed with him in every which way. And so, again, with my conversations with the doctor, with what I've been watching for the last few months, I was convinced of their sincerity, and that's what made me accept the entrance to the Hall of Fame.
Gotcha. So it sounds like as much as Triple H had to do with this, but it sounds like the doctor really had a big part in helping show you the changes in the WWE today.
Well, no question. The doctor had a lot to do with it, because when Paul Levesque or Triple H told me all about it, he sounded extremely sincere about the whole thing. But I guess for me, I was not convinced unless I spoke to Dr. Maroon, because I know him. I've known him for many years, and I know his reputation. I know what kind of a man he is. And like I said, I had personal experience with him because he operated on me 3 different times. So, that Paul told me all about it, but I had to hear it from him. And then everything I heard from him, it made me realize, too, that Paul Levesque or Triple H was being very, very sincere and honest with me. And then the other side, where Dr. Maroon had nothing to do with it, as far as the nudity and the profanity and the vulgarity that was going on in that organization, that was strictly Paul who told me that was gone, that there would be no more of that. And again, about the family friendly and so forth. And so, putting everything together, I believed it, I was convinced, and so I felt that it would only be fair on my part that, as I had been very critical of them, now I must give credit where credit is due, that they did make all these changes, and I applaud them for that. And then that's what, like I say again, Eric, that's what made me change my mind and accept the Hall of Fame.
Is there a part of you now that this is going to happen and it's a month and a half or whatever it is away? Is there a part of you that's excited to have your grandchildren and people in your family that never got a chance to see you in a wrestling ring, see you in Madison Square Garden on a big stage and see you get that respect and that acknowledgement from the wrestling community?
Well, I certainly hope so. In the past, I certainly wouldn't want my grandchildren to even see it, because I was
right.
appalled by all that was going on. Yeah. Today, I can honestly say that I'd be okay with it if they saw it. And the fact that all the things that Paul told me and where the direction they're taking, now they're going to keep going their way. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that if they saw it, and you're going to see it. I think in the future, a lot of the matches from some guys of yesteryear, including myself, and all that to me is all positive stuff that I applaud.
Definitely, definitely. So we know you're going into the Hall of Fame, and you just touched upon a DVD. What can fans expect? Is there going to be more than just you going into the Hall of Fame, or there's going to be a DVD? Are you going to appear on television? Are there any more to this? Is there any more to this than just the Hall of Fame?
Oh, definitely. I will not do a lot of traveling because that I'm tired of, but I will do some. But yes, there will be DVDs. There'll probably be video games featuring me. There will be like that. They have a program called Round Table where they get 3-4 different wrestlers from, I guess, mostly from yesteryear to speak of the business and what it was like and all those kind of things. I agreed to do some of those. Maybe there might be every now and then maybe a personal meeting, a personal appearance in some club. I'm just guessing now, like a Boston or maybe Philadelphia or something like that. But the thing is that they will approach me about the different things, but of course it'll all have to be the things that I agree to do. And I will be fair. I will do what I can, but I will not go on the road like yesteryear. I enjoy my life at home too much with my wife, with my sons, with my grandchildren. I will not go back on the road. But if periodically I have to make one appearance here and there, I'm willing to do that. But yes, I'm more excited about the videos and of they may show highlights of some matches I should say of in Madison Square Garden, some of my best matches. They may do some interviews of me speaking of different opponents throughout my career and make a video of that. And I'm sure they have other things in mind the way they were talking. And like I say, plus maybe they will have a video game and so forth. So, I don't know everything that's going to take place, but there will be opportunities for other things.
Gotcha. Now, I don't know how closely you followed the program over the last couple of years. One thing that popped into my mind when I heard about this deal is their treatment of legends on TV. It's really not that good. I don't know how close you paid attention to it, but they portray a lot of their legends as clowns, as these goofy old men. I mean, is there a point where you would come there and they present you with something that made you look ridiculous and you'd say, no, I'm not doing it?
First of all, I have not seen what you're saying because, as I said, Eric, I only been watching it for the last maybe 2 months, so I'm not familiar with what you just said. But I absolutely assure you, that if anything like that came up with me, I would hope that you know me well enough through all these years that would absolutely backfire on them.
Yeah. That's that, and I do, but I think some of the other fans out there that maybe don't know you as well were a little worried about that.
No chance. Believe me when I tell you, no chance. That would be the biggest mistake they could possibly make if whatever it is that you saw in the past that I'm not familiar with, if they tried to hit me with any of that stuff, that would absolutely not go through.
Gotcha. Now, one of the other questions that a lot of people, I put out there that I was going to interview you, and a lot of people sent in questions, and a lot of them were questions that I already had for you. But one of the biggest questions people had was, who's going to induct you? Do you know yet?
No, I don't know, and I'll tell you why. They were very good about that. When I say they, I'm talking about Paul Levesque, Triple H. He said to me that ordinarily that those who are being inducted, they usually choose who they want to induct them. They asked me in a very, very nice way. They said that if I would allow them to think about it a little bit, because the way they feel, or maybe I don't know who's all they are, but they would like to have someone who's worldly, someone who's known around the world, to do that. And they said that they would come up with maybe 3 or 4 different names, and then they would discuss it with me. And they said that they've been very fair in this. They said that if I disagreed with any and all of who they might suggest, that they would absolutely honor my wishes as to who I'd want. So I want to be fair and give them that opportunity to find out who they're thinking about and so forth. And then I will decide. Now, I don't know if you heard, Eric, but I'm also been inducted into the International Sports Hall of Fame.
Yes, and congratulations.
Well, thank you very kindly. That takes place on March the 2nd, and the people behind this, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Robert Goldman, and there's a staff of, I believe, 48, if I remember correctly, that vote you, nominate you, and then they have to vote. And they voted me unanimously to be inducted in that. Now, this is going to be held in Columbus, Ohio. They're expecting between 175 and 200,000 people for the weekend. And the co-host of that is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so, I know Arnold from before he became a big movie star and the governor and all that. I knew him very well because when I wrestled in California, I used to work out with him in Gold's Gym, and he used to come to the wrestling matches. He's a possibility. I cannot tell you that he hasn't been approached yet about it, but I know that he is one of the possibilities. But there are others. Who the others are, I don't know. But when I go to Columbus on March the 2nd, I will be on stage with Arnold, and I don't know. Maybe I will ask him myself. But and that would be fine with me. Like I repeat, whoever else they have in mind besides Arnold, I don't know. But if they don't work out, they did make it clear to me that to whoever I considered, of course, that they would accept.
Interesting. That's a name I wouldn't have expected. Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's definitely worldly, that's for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned to me over the years, and you used to laugh about this on the show when people would call in and say, Bruno, why aren't you going into the Hall of Fame? And you'd say to them, what Hall of Fame? There's not even a Hall of Fame. Do you think they're any closer to making an actual physical Hall of Fame?
Well, that's another thing. I absolutely brought that up, and I absolutely discussed it with them. Paul Levesque tells me that they have actually looked for different areas. At one time they thought Orlando, Florida, didn't work out. New York, and didn't work out. I didn't push for the reasons why they have not worked out. That's their business. But he more or less told me that, Bruno, we are definitely, we'll keep looking, keep searching, because I can't promise you that it's going to be in 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. But he says, but we are definitely looking for a place, a building, whatever, to have that happen. And the way he's been very sincere with me, Paul Levesque, I believe him, and so I believe that as well, and I think that will happen.
Interesting. And, I've been reading a lot on the internet, and I know a lot of people have as well, about a movie on your life that's in the making. Can you talk a little bit about that for people that might not be aware of the movie and what's going on? Surely.
First of all, before the movie, there was a documentary that's been worked on for 6 whole years. In fact, the people behind this documentary, a gentleman by the name of Marty Lazzaro, who's by profession he's an attorney, but he's a very, very dear friend of mine, whose grandparents came from my neck of the woods in the old country, and he's been a friend of mine since when he was a little kid. And as he learned more and more about me and my life, he said that this was a story that needed to be told. And so he got some people with him, a gentleman by the name of Kenny Brown, and another guy by the name of Josh Britt Orff, who do a lot of filming and so forth, and they've done documentaries in the past. And we actually made four trips altogether in the old country, but 3 were specifically for this documentary. We even went up the mountain where we hid from the Nazis during the war.
Wow.
They interviewed people in my town who went through that experience. They got films and photos of my town, what it looked like after the war when we were bombed so terribly. This thing I'm proud of because I finally saw it because it's complete now. And I saw it from the beginning to the end, and what I love about it is because it's honest, 100% truth. And now there are different people, companies, I should say, who want to be distributors of this project worldwide and so forth. And so we're in a process now of dealing with these different companies to see who we feel is best suited or to do it, who can do it more justice, because of world connections or whatever. As far as the movie, yes, the script, if you will, has been done. They had a very good name in Hollywood screenwriter by the name of Paul Gay, who did it, and he finished it all, and it's done. We understand now the latest on that project is that there are 2 Hollywood studios who are very interested in doing it. But there are some independent companies who also are interested. And now the producer of the show, a gentleman by the name of Scott Rosenfeld, whom you probably heard of him too. He's the guy who produced Home Alone. Remember that movie? And indeed 38 other movies that he was involved with. So he's in the process of meeting and so forth, not only with the studio, but from some independent people who want to finance it and produce it. So that's where we are with that. That's in the making. But to be honest with you, I'm more excited about the documentary because I know for a fact that it's 100% truth from beginning to end. The movies too often tend to Hollywoodizing it, as the old saying goes, make changes. And even though I have a say-so about that, but I still don't feel as comfortable with that as I do about the documentary. But then again, they're supposedly already looking into casting, who's going to be doing this or that. I'll feel much more as far as comfortable I am with it when it's all said and done. The documentary, like I said, I have seen it, and I'm extremely proud of it, and I can't wait till the whole public and the world gets to see it because I really think it was great.
I can't wait. I mean, like I said earlier, we've been talking now for over 10 years, and I've gotten to know your story over those 10 years, and I can't wait to see what that's like in a major motion picture.
Well, hopefully, Eric, you won't have to wait much longer because the documentary, I think, is going to show sometimes later this year.
Good. Excellent. Again, I asked fans questions, and one of the questions that keeps coming up is about what do you think's going to happen when you meet Vince McMahon? Do you have any idea of what you're planning to say to him or what?
You know what? I don't know. We're not going to meet until Madison Square Garden on April the 6th, for the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've been asked that too, Eric. The only answer I can give is this. I have extremely critical of him as to the direction he took wrestling to. And again, I go back to the rampant drug, steroid use and all that stuff. The nudity, the vulgarity, the profanity. I've been extremely critical of him. But by the same token, I want to be fair. After every meeting with Dr. Maroon, I told you who heads the drug program and all that, mm-hmm. and watching the nudity, the profanity, the vulgarity, I think I am man enough to, as critical as I've been of him, I will also give him credit for having turned around and made all these great changes, and I would have no problem expressing that to him when the time comes. What's going to happen, I don't know, but when I do meet him on that night, I will naturally, as the old saying goes, you have to play it by ear, but I am. I certainly will meet him face to face, and I can look him into the eye, and I will tell him if we're going to have a conversation as to the different things, as he very, very well knows that what bothered me tremendously. But I will be man enough to also tell him and congratulate him that he saw the light and turned things around the way he has, and I will let him express that to him as well.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in from a fan, I thought this is a great question, is somebody asked me to ask you who your inspiration was.
In wrestling?
I guess in wrestling, who inspired you, who motivated you during your career?
As a little kid in Italy, I always heard the name Primo Carnera. I was fascinated by him, the name, and what I had heard he had done. And in Italy, he was worshipped. The Primo Carnera, my God, he was a giant. He became world heavyweight champion boxing. You know, he beat what was his name? Ernie Schaefer. No, not Ernie Schaefer. He's not terrible. I can't remember who he took the title from. But anyway, and then, it actually started in wrestling, then he went into boxing, then he came back into wrestling. And Carnera was about 6'7", 275 pounds, and in Italy he was worshipped as a giant. And I still hear so many stories about him that oh my God, I idolized him and never even had met him.
Oh, wow.
So when I came to this country and I trained for both weightlifting and wrestling in the early years, I never forgot Carnera and his reputation and the way he was thought of and so forth and so on. And then when I came over here in this country, like I said, and developed myself and was watching TV, I actually saw him on television, and I saw what everybody was talking about him as far as this giant, 6'7", 275, not an ounce of fat in his body, And, oh gosh, I thought that was unbelievable. Then another guy that I saw that also inspired me was, I don't know if you remember the name, but Argentino Rocca.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah, Rocca's, Antonino Rocca, who was also from Treviso, Italy, who went to Argentina as a 16-year-old, I believe. And I looked and admired these guys. And so when I became a wrestler, that was one of my biggest thrills, that I got to not only meet Primo Carnera, but I got to be his tag team partner in a number of matches. And same thing with Rocca. I was tag team partners with him in the Garden and a number of times in that. So these guys, as far as looking up to people and admiring and respect and all that, they were probably the two most ones that influenced me the most.
Something I never asked you over the years is about the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal. You had all those NFL players in there who I'm guessing really weren't that smart to the business. What was that like to be a part of it and work with those players?
To be perfectly honest with you, that part of my career I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
That was after I had retired in 1982. I came back as a color commentator in September of 1984. And in 1985, I was asked to put the tights on, and I refused. But my son was there at the time, David, and I was put in an awkward position with David because he was told that if I'd put on the tights and if he and I, would be tag team here and there, that this would be a great boost for him. And well, long story short, I was totally against it because I was totally retired, but I didn't want it to be said from my son or anybody that I didn't do what I could to help him in his career. So I put on the tights, but I was very, very unhappy about that. I didn't want no part of it. And not only did I wrestle a tag team with David a number of times, but then I was asked to appear in single matches as well. And again, I really didn't want no part of it, but I did. And then this WrestleMania that you're talking about, the first one I was a second to my son as he was wrestling in Madison Square Garden, I believe against Brutus.
I think it was Brutus Beefcake.
Something like that, if I remember correctly. And then I was asked in Chicago, and I did go to that Battle Royal in Chicago with the ball players and that. But in any of those events that I put the tights on, I can only tell you this, that I didn't like it. I hated it. I didn't want no part of it. I felt that I was put in a position to where I almost felt like I had to, but I absolutely wanted no part of it. And in fact, to be perfectly honest with you, Eric, I never even considered that as part of my career. When people ask me, when did I wrestle and when did I retire, I say, hey, I started in 1959 and I retired in 1982. I don't even look at the rest of it as part of my career because I didn't belong there. I didn't want to be there. I wanted no part of it. It wasn't my doing. It wasn't my choice. So I just don't consider that as part of my wrestling career.
Gotcha. You know, you brought up the color commentary thing, and I wanted to tell you, I recently watched an interview with Jesse Ventura, and Jesse said in the interview, I'm curious for your thoughts on this, that he begged Vince McMahon to try and keep you because you were the perfect foil for him, that he liked working with you so much as the good guy, good cop, bad cop, that he begged Vince McMahon to keep you and was really upset when you had left at that point.
Jesse Ventura said that?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I left because when I came back in September 1984, and I start seeing the changes that had taken place in wrestling, I start seeing the use and abuse, as far as I was concerned, of steroids and enhancement drugs, and I start seeing the changes in wrestling itself, as far as, you know, with the nudity and some stuff I thought was vulgar and all that. I became so very, very bothered by it all. I really became disgusted with it all, and that's what caused me to leave. I didn't want no part of it. And as you know, Eric, for the next couple of years, I became very outspoken about all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So that was the reason that I left. Had that not happened, I don't know for how long, but I absolutely would have stayed doing color commentating, or if I could have contributed in any way, shape, or form with wrestling, as far as young people, in helping any which way I could, I would have been delighted to do that. But the direction it took, it bothered me tremendously, and I just felt that I couldn't be part of that, and I found it very necessary for me to bow out and leave.
Are you surprised that Jesse said that? Because if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we've talked a lot, but I vaguely remember you telling me one time when we talked about this that you felt ostracized by Jesse and Vince when the three of you guys were doing commentary, and that they would dress in a dressing room by themselves, and they would stay away from you and kind of keep you out of the loop. Does that surprise you?
Well, I was disappointed in the fact that there was doors where, you know, different rooms where everybody dressed. And here the three of us, first it was me and Vince doing the commentary. Then Jesse joined us, because prior to that he was doing it with somebody else, because remember they had the couple that they had, I forget, the All-Star Wrestling, and they had something else.
I think they had Wrestling Challenge was one of them.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He was with one group, I think with maybe Monsoon, if I remember right, and I was doing it with Vince. Then Vince brought him in with the three of us. And yeah, that's true. There was a dressing room. It only had Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, like I wasn't even there. My name didn't exist. So I would change wherever I had to change to get dressed for that. But I guess it was because already I had shown some, what's the proper word, displeasure of what was going on. And so I guess there were hints thrown my way, I'm assuming. I don't know. But it wasn't long after that I had to get out. I bowed out of that organization.
Now, Jesse came back a couple of years ago and actually called a match with Vince. Would you call a match with Vince for one last time?
We mean call. You mean commentary?
Yes.
do the commentating, you mean, or what?
Yes, the commentary.
No, that's behind me. I mean, no, there's been no such talk. I have not been asked. As the old saying goes, I'd cross that bridge when I come to it. But it would all depend. It would have to be something that I would I agree with, approve of. Okay. But no, just if they wanted me to do something, if I didn't like it or believe in it or whatever, I absolutely would not do it.
At what, this is a fan question that came in. At what point in your career did you feel like you made it? Did you feel like you were finally a success?
When I beat Buddy Rogers in Madison Square Garden for the title, and by the way, that's 50 years ago.
Good one, good answer.
Yeah, because after that, when I beat Rogers for the title, well, I knew now I was the headliner. Sure, I had concerns. I had serious concerns because I thought, okay, I was given this opportunity. I am the new Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. The question now in my mind was, would people accept me as that? Will they come up? Will they come to the arena when I'm headlined? And naturally, you're concerned about that. But I must tell you, and I'm so grateful, it didn't take long for me to get that out of my mind because the people were very supportive of me. They came out. They came out by the groves, and I cannot tell you what they did to me as far as the respect and appreciation and love I've had for the fans, because I've never kidded myself, and I don't know if I've ever told you in your program, but I know I've said this many, many times. In this business, when you're given the opportunity to be a headliner, if you are advertised as a headliner, but if the people don't come out to see you, you're not going to stay a headliner very long. And I was a headliner for close to a quarter of a century. And so whatever success I've had, I really owe it all to the fans because they came out and supported me. If they'd not done that, I would have never been, successful as I was as far as being a headliner. And so I honestly, truly feel that I owe it all to the fans. They are the ones who are responsible for me to have been the headliner for as long as I was.
As far as your speech goes, your Hall of Fame speech, your WWE Hall of Fame speech, do you plan, this is a fan question that came in, do you plan on writing it out, or do you plan on just going up there and talking off the cuff?
I never write any speech. I've spoken in many, many occasions. I was honored here in Pittsburgh with one of the greatest sports banquets in the country, and I was honored as the Lifetime Achievement Award. They asked me to give a 30-minute speech. No, I'd never write anything, nor anybody writes anything. I speak strictly as I feel, as what's in my heart. And when it comes to the Hall of Fame, that night I will see how things go, and I will speak, but no written speeches of any kind. I will speak as what I feel on that particular night and what it means to me, and I will try best of my ability to express all that.
All right. You'd mentioned a couple of times that you watched the product just to see what was going on and to get a feel for it. This was a couple of fans have asked me to ask you, was there anybody that you watched that stood out to you that you thought was good? Did you thought maybe had a bright future?
You know what, Eric? Yeah, I've been asked that by other interviews that I've done. I'm not trying to be unfair. Please understand, I'm not trying to be unfair to anybody, but it was so different in my era from what I see today that I really can't make any comparisons. It's a different world. It's a completely different world of wrestling. Maybe some of us, including myself, maybe we wouldn't fit in some of the things that these guys. I'll give you an example. I see some of these guys that go up to the top rope and they do a back somersaults and they do all these kind of things. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't attempt to do stuff like that. But in my day, when I think back of some of my, let's talk about just my opponents. When I talk about the Killer Kowalski, the Ivan Koloff, the Don Leo Jonathan, the Big Bill Millers, the Turo Tanaka, these kind of people, I don't see any of those guys around today. I don't, like I say, I'm not putting anybody here today in any way, shape, or form down, but it's just a completely different world of wrestling. I just cannot make the comparison from the people that I knew of yesteryear and the people that I know today. It's just a completely different ball game as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the talent. You know, when I used to complain about steroids and stuff, people used to say to me, boy, these guys are big, they're much better built than you did. Well, the difference was that those guys that were, you were using these drugs, they developed themselves and they muscled up and all that stuff. The difference in my day, when you talk about Big Bill Miller, for example, 6'7", 340 pounds, or Don Leo Jonathan, 6'8", 350 pounds, or Ernie Ladd, 6'11", 330, 40 pounds, or Bobo Brazil, 6'4", 5", whatever he was, 320. These were naturally big men. I myself wasn't anywhere near as tall as those guys. I was 6 feet tall even, but I was also, in the early part of my career, I was 275. After I broke my neck, I dropped down to 250 and decided to stay at that weight because I was losing a step naturally as I was getting older. Now that I've been watching wrestling in the past couple of months, these guys are very athletic and they do a lot of acrobatic moves and a lot of good, impressive looking stuff. I don't want to take anything away from that. But again, it's a completely different style, different ways than it was in my day. And that's why I just cannot even begin to make a comparison between the two.
What did you think of CM Punk dropping your name recently in a couple of his promos?
Well, I don't know if he was just saying things to create some controversy, but what he said was extremely silly. He said that I only wrestled once a month in Madison Square Garden. He made it sound like that was it, that I only wrestled once a month. The reality is that the first 8 years that I had the belt, 2 weeks out of the month I would wrestle 7 days a week, and the other 2 weeks I would wrestle 6 days a week. I would have only 2 days of the month free to come home and visit the family. When I used to go to Japan, to Australia, or Japan, or South America, wherever I went, it would be on tour where you wrestled every single day, and then you'd come back in time for the Garden. Vince McMahon would not run the Garden without me, Vince McMahon Sr. So if I'd wrestle on a Monday, Tuesday morning I'd be catching a plane to make my way either to Japan or Australia, wherever I was going. But then once I got there, I would be on tour for the 3 weeks and then make sure that I left and came back in New York in time for the next Garden show. The point is this: in my 23-year career, I wrestled close to 7,000 times. So when Mr. Punk talks about once a month in Madison Square Garden, he was either just saying stuff to maybe aggravate or anger some people, or he just doesn't have a clue about what my career was all about.
One of the fans had asked me to ask you your thoughts on going into the Hall of Fame the same night as Bob Backlund. And I know you and I have talked about Backlund over the years on my show. So just, quickly, what was some of your thoughts on going in, ironically, the same night as him?
Well, look, I understand that Mick Foley is going to be going. Bob Backlund. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to say this girl that's going in, I'm not familiar with her.
Trish Stratus.
Yeah, I just don't know her because, like I said, I wasn't watching. I didn't watch wrestling for many, many years. So there are a lot of people that I did not know in the organization. So evidently, whoever this girl is, she must be well thought of to be inducted into this Hall of Fame. As far as Mick Foley, I didn't see too much of his career because I wasn't watching it at the time, but I never heard anything negative about him. I know that any interview that I've heard him on outside of the wrestling world, he was always seems to be a very respectful guy. I know that he was trained by a good buddy of mine named Dominic DeNucci, who Dominic always spoke very well of Mick Foley, and he always told me that Mick Foley was a very nice guy, a good guy who respected the old timers, who Dominic couldn't say enough good stuff about him, and I believe and trust Dominic because I know him very, very well. So everything I heard about Mick Foley, I like very, very much. Sounds like he's a very, very good man. As far as Backlund, I'm more familiar with him in his wrestling career, and I would say that he was champion for a good period of time. He was a guy who always kept himself in good shape, and he was another guy, no gimmick or nothing. He just went in the ring with a pair of boots and tights, and I certainly believe very strongly that he belongs into that Hall of Fame, and I'm very happy that he's been inducted into the Hall of Fame. To be perfectly honest with you, because I objected to the idea of going to the Hall of Fame, I wasn't sure of all who entered. I didn't know everybody was in it. I kind of thought that maybe he was already in, and in fact I was a little surprised to find out that he had not gone into the Hall of Fame, but I'm happy for him that he is finally going in, this year.
Yep. Yeah. So what is, as we wrap up the interview here, your fans have been very, very passionate and supportive over the years. What's the reaction you've gotten from your fans once the news broke that you're going to be going into the Hall of Fame? I
got to be very honest with you. It's been overwhelming. I cannot tell you. I never, I expected that there would be a reaction of my going to the Hall of Fame. I would expect that some people would be happy and thrilled about it, and I would expect that some people might not be, that I might even get some criticism because of the way I've been outspoken in the past. But no, I've gotten hardly just about zero of that. I'm sure there are some, but I haven't gotten that. Everybody that's contacted me through emails and through letters and through phones, they're all saying how thrilled they are that I finally, am going to go into that Hall of Fame, and they're thrilled about it, and all positive stuff. I must say, and pleasantly surprised. There's very, very little negative. I haven't had any, but I'm sure, like I say, that there must be some out there.
All right, and as we wrap this up here, I just want to say, Bruno, that I'm just very excited that the fans of today and this generation are going to have a chance to see Bruno Sammartino, to see Bruno Sammartino matches and videos and interviews, because up until now, as you know, they've buried your past. The fans aren't they try and bury the matches and the tapes, and now these fans are going to get a chance to get acquainted with you, and I think that's fantastic, and I'm just really happy for you for that, and I'm happy for them that they will get a chance to really be able to sink their teeth into a big part of wrestling history.
Well, you know what, Eric? Thank you, and so am I. But in today's world, and believe me, nobody knows less about computers and internet than I do. I'm totally in the dark on that. But all the people, and even family, my own sons and friends who talk to me about that, I think that there's so much information about you in the internet especially, that I think that people may be young who have not seen guys like me, but they certainly seem to know about me. And I'll tell you the proof of that surprised me, almost shocked me, I should say. And that is that on Monday Night Raw, when they announced that I was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I believe this was in Atlanta, Georgia, not New York or Philadelphia or Boston, but Atlanta, Georgia. And I happened to watch at night because I was told that they were going to announce me. And I must tell you that I was shocked when I saw the reaction of the audience. I mean, they all stood up and applauded, and a lot of people started even chanting my name. And that really surprised me because these are younger people who were not around at the time when I was wrestling. So it tells me that they must, through the internet and what have you, that they must really, really follow and you know, see who was who and when and so forth. Because I was really, really shocked at the reaction that it got, and not only that, but worldwide. I don't know if you knew this, but what they call it, and I'm not familiar with it, but it was told to me, Trent, Twitter, or whatever they call it, worldwide, that for a while that was the most talked subject around the world, was my going into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So I'm saying that times have changed so drastically that even young people might know who you are because of this, you know, like stuff like the internet and what have you.
Yeah. Well, Bruno, first of all, I want to apologize to the lovely Mrs. Sammartino from taking you away from her on Valentine's Day for an hour. But really, it is always an honor and a pleasure. And I mean, really, the biggest thrill that I've had in doing these shows, since 1998 is just getting to know you and having you on the show and just giving the fans a forum to ask you questions and interact. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just so thrilled to be seeing you acknowledged and a part of the wrestling culture today. And it was an honor to speak with you again. And hopefully after the ceremony and after things settle down a little bit, we can catch up and let the fans know what happened and any behind-the-scenes stuff.
I would be very, very happy, Eric, and I do thank you so very, very much. You've always been very kind and generous with me in time and so forth. And as far as the fans, I hope that I've answered their questions. And anytime you have me on and they have questions, I always like to hear it and do my best to answer them, you know, the best of my ability. So I thank you, Eric. It's always a pleasure to do your show.
Well, always a pleasure to have you.